Hello and welcome to Finishing Touch. My name is Riley James. This is a podcast via the State Soccer Network. Today's show is sponsored by Dagan Media. The biggest social media sites make billions of dollars each year. Carve out your own piece of that money with Dagan Media. They create a social media website for a specific niche that you are passionate about. Packages include a website, sales landing pages, marketing tools, and other resources for you to start growing your new website and selling advertising just like the big media sites. Contact Dagan Media today and you will receive 1 free month of generated traffic to your new website. Join the community of social titans today. And today we have quite the guest. A defender for your Houston Dynamo, the 8th overall pick in the 2019 MLS Super Draft, a Cal Bear, a person I'm very excited to talk to today, Sam Junqua. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Quite the resume you have there. 8th overall pick. That's very high. I've interviewed 20th overall and 66th overall, but I've never interviewed 8th overall. So that must have been quite a day for you.
Yeah, it was a really exciting day. A lot kind of evolved as the draft neared, and I didn't expect to be going that high until kind of the morning of the draft. I got word that I was probably going to go kind of somewhere in the first round, but it was overall just a really exciting process.
So I want to start with the draft. Before we get into Cal, before we get into your development and now ultimately being with the Dynamo, that super draft process, that had to have been kind of a whirlwind of a lot of different things. You said you knew you were going kind of high. Did you have any expectation? Did you kind of know anything about Houston beforehand? Any inclination that they were going to take you? What was the morning of like, as far as just kind of wondering where you're going to live for the next couple of years?
So I would say up until, a couple weeks before the draft, my expectations were not high. I was, just trying to get an opportunity at an MLS team, hopefully get drafted and then see how things go during preseason. I knew about the interest from the Houston Dynamo because I went to a combine with maybe 5 MLS teams, and the Houston Dynamo were one of them. I had a little bit of contact with them, including at the biggest combine, the MLS combine. I had a kind of an interview with them, and so I knew that they were interested. The extent to which they were interested, I did not know, and I didn't expect to go to Houston because they already had a number of players in my position. And they weren't as maybe forward with their interests. So I was actually shocked when they took me. Was there anything else about that I missed?
No, I was just curious about, your life is going to change that day and just
Yeah.
the whirlwind of emotions. Like, I don't know where I'm going to live in a week from now. So that had to have been incredibly kind of, you had to been excited. Obviously, you're starting your career, but there's a lot of emotion we don't talk about with these draft prospects. Like, they just don't know what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
you going to Houston had to have been a big shock just because of all the factors that you said. So when you got selected by Houston, what was the emotion like?
I guess kind of unsure of how to feel. Obviously very excited. And I knew that just because I was drafted, it didn't mean, all that much because I didn't have a contract at that point. And usually you have to go into preseason and, earn one. And so, that made it, a bit of a subdued celebration. The work wasn't done and nothing was guaranteed. But nonetheless, it was exciting. My girlfriend has her family in Denton, which is outside of Dallas. So, I was lucky that it was in the same state, and so kind of have a bit of a home base away from home, which is California for me. So that was all very exciting.
You just mentioned California. I want to talk about growing up in California, the soccer scene is obviously pretty big there, and the college soccer scene is probably one of the better states, just as far as as many teams that California has. So you ended up going to Cal. Can you talk about your recruitment process and what you went through at 16, 17, 18 to be able to get to go to Berkeley, and what was that process like?
Yeah, the process was quite smooth for me. I was fortunate because I played for Deanza Force Academy, which was at the time a very strong academy. My age group particularly was good. The coach, Sean Sakiris, was very helpful in navigating the recruitment process because it was a very foreign process. I didn't know too much about it, but we were a good team. We had tons of college coaches coming out to our games, and so I didn't have to do as much of the creating videos, pushing them out, emailing coaches, because I was fortunate that they would reach out to my coach and my coach would just put me in touch with them. Um, and so the conversation started there. I was looking at teams mainly in California. Um, and, frankly, it was difficult at that age to know exactly what I wanted. That's part of the reason why I wanted to kind of focus on California, because it helped to narrow it down a little bit. And it's less complicated with things like out of state tuition not being a factor. And yeah, it's hard to know. I didn't know what I wanted to study, so I just kind of looked at overall academic reputation. But the biggest thing I would say was I was looking at the fit of the soccer team, the strength of it, and how it would help me to progress to the next level afterwards.
So it's very interesting you bring up the academic side. I had Derek Waldeck on the show. He's a player from
Mm-hmm.
North Texas and USL. He went to Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's a big school. Cal Berkeley, huge academic school. How did you prepare yourself for the academic side, and what were the expectations from student athletes to be in the classroom?
Yeah, being a student athlete, there was a good amount of help that we received. We could get some tutors, and we got priority enrollment. All these things made a big difference. Priority enrollment was very important because it was important that we were able to take the classes we need to in order to graduate in time, and also to be able to take classes that didn't interfere with training schedule. And as far as preparation goes, in a lot of ways, I actually found Berkeley to be easier than high school. It was a lot more kind of the schedule was a lot more tailor made for a student athlete. I could choose when I had class. I wasn't training and getting home at like 10 p.m. or later and then having to wake up at 7 a.m. the next morning. All that in high school was really inefficient, and it was that bothered me. But in college, that was easier. My high school was actually very strong academically. It made it tough to balance. And so all that kind of prepared me for college pretty well. And so, from the factors that, I've listed, before, that really helped to make the transition kind of smooth for me.
Brief interruption. We are looking for advertisers for the State Soccer Network website and the app. You can advertise to over 2,000 daily users on statesoccernetwork.com and the SSN app. Plans start at $30 a month, but mention our show in the email and you will get 1 month of that free. Contact statesoccernetwork@gmail.com for more information. And back to the show. So moving past college, you get drafted by Houston, you sit down to USL. And there is a lot of value in USL. I've talked to a lot of people on the show about playing in USL and coaching in USL. From your experience down there in the Valley, what do you take away from the USL experience, and what do you think the value has for USL?
I think that it's a big jump to go from college to the MLS. So I think naturally for most players, they're going to need some games in the USL to kind of help them transition. I was fortunate to be in a situation where I was training week in, week out with the Dynamo, and I would fly over to play games on the weekends with RGV. Um, so I was still living in Houston, which was a big bonus. Still training with the first team. That helped me get acclimated. And, I think it's an important step that most players are going to need in order to transition, because college, it frankly doesn't do enough to prepare most players for the transition to the MLS.
So that transition from going to college to playing in USL, obviously there had to have been some disappointment not to go straight to Major League Soccer. But how do you well, what advice do you have for kids who expect to go and play on this high level and have to spend some time in a developmental process or whatever else? Do you have any advice on how you handled it and what they should do as far as just taking that and kind of running with it?
Yeah, it's important to treat all the opportunities you get, in the USL or whatever situation it is that's non MLS, as a very important opportunity, because I've seen players who kind of take it lightly because, they're getting sent down from the first team and they're kind of not taking it too seriously. And that never ends well. I think the team that's sending you to go get games is going to be watching. They're looking for certain things. They want to see you do well. And it really does help set you up to get more opportunities with the first team. So really do your best with it. The other thing I would say is that, cut yourself some slack, because it's not easy. Even if, honestly, as nice as it is to get games with the USL team, it's in some ways it feels like a lose-lose situation, because you're sitting down and you're expected to be the best player because you're coming from the first team. But you know, you're getting maybe one day of training with the team beforehand, and you're thrown into this new environment. Every single game that I played with the second team was an away game, because even home games I'll be flying the day before, and living out of a hotel, doing all that. And there's a lot to adjust to in a short amount of time, and it's not easy to be playing at your best. It's not the ideal circumstances, but you just have to make the best of it. And sometimes you're not going to be able to play at your your peak, but that's okay. It's just important to approach it with the right attitude and make the most of it.
Yeah, that's a very unique situation that you had to deal with. You're living in Houston, you're training with the Dynamo, and then you fly down and stay in a hotel for a night. How did you
Mhm.
mentally get ready for games? Because I mean, I've talked to athletes all the time, and they have this process. It's leading up to the game. They have a strict routine. You're flying in the day before. You don't have any practice time. How do you mentally prepare yourself to go into a game with those guys?
It was really difficult. That was probably one of the biggest challenges about the whole situation. Um, I strongly disliked it. I have become more flexible and kind of go with the flow a little bit more. I'm better about that now. But before, I was pretty regimented and I wanted to be doing certain things to prepare for the game. And I couldn't do those things because I'd find out on a Thursday night that I'd be training on Friday morning with the first team and then going straight to the airport, flying to the second team. And then they would actually often have me train for part of the training. So I'm like, it didn't make sense to me, but I was, training like 1.5 trainings a day before a game when I liked to keep it light, um, and not finally getting to the hotel until after dinner late at night. And, it just felt like a mess. It was hard to prepare mentally because um, there was so much going on. And mentally, I felt very distracted. So, um, yeah, I didn't love it, but it helped me to kind of learn to kind of go with the flow and help me to adjust to these kind of difficult situations and find a way to perform anyways.
I mean, if you can perform in that type of situation, staying with an MLS team and spending your entire week in Houston might be an easier task. And that's
Yeah, it
seemingly what
is.
you've done.
It very
You,
much is. I agree.
you've had some valuable Dynamo experiences this past 2 seasons, and you've stayed with the team. Can you talk about maybe your debut and what experiences you've had? Like we just said, staying in Houston for the entire week, but also just being around the first team and playing in MLS games.
Yeah. So my Dynamo debut came in 2019 in the Open Cup, but I'll talk about my MLS debut that came in the MLS bubble at the MLS's back tournament in Orlando. I came on maybe 10 minutes left in the second half against LAFC. And, as a substitute, you don't usually know when you're going to be going on, especially as a defender. It's usually not planned. Um, and so kind of got thrown in there, feeling nervous. The game's tied 3-3. LAFC is a good team. I think I was guarding Rossi, who's a good player. And, it's probably not the most helpful thoughts to be having, but you're thinking, I'm thinking to myself, there's not much to gain. I just, don't want to make a mistake against somebody like Rossi and, lose the game. So just playing hard and, at the same time trying to push forward a little bit, because it's tied and we also wanted a result. Thankfully, it went well. It was a short amount of time, but it went well. And from there, I slowly got some more opportunities last season and ended up with just under 10 appearances overall.
One last interruption before we finish the show. Finishing Touch is now looking for sponsors. We have 3 ad spots, as you saw today, and 100,000 views the first 8 episodes of this show. It's only going to get bigger. We thank you so much for the hot start that we've had, and we want to advertise your company in one of those 3 spots. Contact statessoccernetwork@gmail.com for more information, and please enjoy the end of the show. First, a couple things from that. The MLS's back tournament thing, that had to have been weird on the inside because it was weird on the outside.
Yeah.
And then coming on and guarding a guy like Diego Rossi, who is fantastic. He's brilliant for LAFC, and I'm sure he'll be sent off to Europe within the next couple of months. But I mean, that MLS's back tournament, having your first experience in Major League Soccer, not playing against Orlando City, but in Orlando at Disney World. I mean, that's a wild thing. So to be able to take away from that and have the appearances and have the experience that you have as an MLS player it's truly incredible so far. But I want to talk about that goal. Scoring your first MLS goal. I mean, how was that? Just big picture. Was it everything you've ever imagined?
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. I was entering the box late for the corner because we were losing, and so they sent more players forward than we normally would. I think normally I would have stayed back. So I was kind of running up there, didn't really break my stride, and just got into the box. I made contact with the ball, but I wasn't quite sure where it went until I saw that it had ended up in the back of the net. And, had a surreal feeling like, okay, is this a legit goal? Is anything going to be called? And then realizing, okay, we're still down 2-1. So no time to waste. Let's start it again and kind of running back. And so this celebration was subdued because of that. But the feeling nonetheless was, a really fantastic feeling. Because that was still one of my first couple of appearances, maybe the third or so. And it was really exciting.
How do you kind of reconcile that feeling with like, yes, I just scored my first professional goal, but also we're still losing the game, and like you want to celebrate and you want to have that moment, but you're not in a position where you're necessarily thinking about, hey, I just scored my first goal, but you're thinking about the team aspect. How do you kind of deal with that in real time?
Yeah. I would say it kind of helped that teammates weren't necessarily in a completely celebratory mood. Everybody's like, all right, grab the ball from the back of the net. And
Right.
so everybody else was already, thinking that way. So it came kind of naturally. Um, you can kind of sense it in the atmosphere. So I would say it was a little bit natural, kind of from the attitudes of the other players as well.
Yeah, I remember being at that game. I was in the press box for that one, and
Nice.
everyone was just kind of like, "Was that Sam? Oh, Sam!" And it was a nice moment and for everyone involved. I was thrilled to be there. So congrats on scoring an MLS goal. But one more thing. Thank you so much for the time. First off, it's been great to talk
No
to you.
problem.
The point of this show is to give advice to the next generation of players. I told you before, our demographic is 13 to 17-year-old soccer players.
Mhm.
To be able to make it to the professional level like you have, what is a piece of general advice to be able to tell kids to push them to be the best versions of themselves, whether it be playing high school soccer, college soccer, academy programs, or even becoming a professional player?
Uh, I would say one, you have to keep having fun with it. When you stop having fun with it, it's not going to be sustainable. Um, and that ties into just staying in the game really sets you apart from a lot of other players because there's a bit of a funnel from youth soccer where a lot of people get weeded out for different reasons, whether, they stop loving it as much or they don't want to commit as much or, whatever it may be, just sticking with it and continuing to work hard. It really sets you apart from the majority of the players. So the two things I would say is to always make sure to enjoy it and to just stick with it and kind of persevere because there's going to be hard times at some point. It might not come right away, but when it does, the difference is, if you stay with it and you keep going or, you get discouraged or distracted by it.
Sam, I do certainly appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck going into the off season and into 2022. And I hope to see you on the field a lot more next year for the Dynamo.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Riley.
You got it, man. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Hi, thank you so much for watching the show. We really do appreciate it here at the State Soccer Network. We also have some socials for you to check out: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at State Soccer Network. And at the State Soccer Network, we also have a website, statesoccernetwork.com, as you can see right there. It's available in the show description with a direct link to find out how to sign up your local high school soccer team and contests and events to win prizes. We also have an iOS app available in the App Store. Thank you so much for watching the things that we make. It really does mean a lot. And remember, the State Soccer Network, a place where you can become the next great American talent.